The most important lessons I've learned in DevOps engineering did not come from a course, a video, a senior engineer, or a certification. They came from a 100-year-old sushi master running a tiny restaurant at a subway station in Tokyo. What he taught me completely changed the engineer I became, and in this video I'm going to share all the lessons I've learned from him and how those ultimately made me a sovereign craftsman, making well over 6 figures a year while traveling the world in my camper van and doing work I absolutely love. So who is this man and why am I talking about him? Well, his name is Jiro, and he is, again, a 100-year-old sushi master, and he is what the Japanese call a shokunin. And a shokunin does not really have a direct translation into English, but the best or the closest we can come is an artisan or a craftsman. But it means more than that. Like, a shokunin is someone who devotes their entire life to their craft. So you have many different types of shokunin. In this case, Jiro is a shokunin in sushi, so he dedicated his life to making sushi. But there's also stories of, there's this woman who makes paintbrushes, and all she does is put these paintbrushes together with all of the hairs in the exact right order. It's those kinds of small tasks that they completely perfect to a complete art. That is the depth that a shokunin goes into. They really specialize on this one thing, and they do this one thing over and over and over again for millions of times to make it absolutely perfect. And this is how Jiro was able to get this tiny restaurant. There's like 4 chairs in there, and he won 3 Michelin stars with a tiny restaurant in a subway station. So these shokunin, what they do is they don't chase novelty, they are chasing depth. And this is a key lesson that I learned from here. Go deep. And this is not just about the tasks itself. Jiro, he does the same routine every single day. He even stands at the exact same spot when he takes the subway to his restaurant. He dislikes holidays, and he basically does the same thing also in his daily life. So the whole daily routine is almost exactly the same. He dislikes holidays and he prefers to work. And even at 100 years old, he has no plans of retiring yet. He's still mentioning that he would like to go on for at least 5 more years. And he is at the restaurant every single day to this day, as far as I know. And when someone asked him about the secret to his health, his reply was to work. I think the best medicine is to work. And I just absolutely love this sort of deep work ethic, that it's not about getting the result, it just comes from within. The work itself is the goal, and it's also very similar to my own motivations to work. Like, I love my work so much, what I do, my engineering work, my coaching work, like getting people into DevOps careers. Like, I feel so fortunate that I am allowed to do this. One of the deepest lessons here is that the work is the goal. It's not the outcome, it's the goal. Work itself is the goal. And one of the most life-changing quotes of his that deeply influenced me at the beginning of my career is the following: once you decide on your occupation, you must immerse yourself in your work. You have to fall in love with your work. Never complain about your job. You must dedicate your life to mastering your skill. That's the secret of success, and that is the key to be regarded honorably. It changed my life. The way how he put it there, and the way he talks about mastering your skill and dedicating your life to it. This was a pivotal moment in my own life, because when I encountered this, I had been living a pretty colorful life. I had about 3 different careers, right? I had been project manager in the oil industry. I had worked as a nurse for many years, and I had spent 2 years in a Buddhist monastery as a monk. So I definitely explored a lot. And I was at a point in my life where I really needed to make a decision. And when I left the monastery, that is when this pivotal moment happened for me, where I basically had to make a decision on what career I was going to pursue. And I'm, in many ways, I'm sort of envious envious of people who, ever since they're a child, they know exactly what they want to do, right? I never had that. I never had this feeling of I want to become X, Y, or Z. So when I set out to decide what I wanted to do, I asked myself the question, what do I like to do in my free time? And the answer to that obviously was tinkering with computers, writing code, automating games, deploying servers. I love doing that, but it never really occurred to me that I could do that as my job because I didn't have a CS degree. I was full of limiting beliefs and I thought I could never do it. So when I encountered this quote and I was in the process of making this decision, I really felt that, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to dedicate my life to this. I'm going to make it my life's mission to land this job, and I'm going to dedicate my life to my craft. And that's what I did. I went so deep. And that's also why I am the man I am today. Because what most people miss about this, like, it's not this sort of grinding, work really hard. Jiro describes himself as being ecstatic while he does his work. His work is a kind of ecstasy for him. And I experienced the same. Like when I landed my first DevOps job, I was in heaven. I was like, I get to do this stuff for work. I can work with Linux servers all day and get paid for it. It was like a mind-blowing experience for me. And I had so much fun. I still have so much fun in my work, in my engineering work, in my teaching work. It truly feels joyful for me. And that is the spirit of the Shokunin. They're not doing this out of suffering. They're not doing this as a grind. They're doing it because the work brings them joy. If you can find the key where work becomes joyful, then your life completely changes. So we have a sushi master and a DevOps engineer, right? These seem worlds apart. Now I will dive a little bit deeper into how this relates to DevOps specifically. But before we continue, I want to highlight something very important. My team made me aware of a very interesting statistic, which is that 78% of those who are watching my videos are not subscribed. Now, we are approaching a very important milestone for this channel. I'm almost at 100,000 subscribers. I'd never thought that I would make it as a niche DevOps creator, that I could one day be even close to 100,000 subscribers. So I would like to ask you, if you have ever gotten any value from my videos, if I taught you something, or if I have helped you in any way, please support my channel completely for free by clicking the subscribe button right now. You don't understand how much that means to me and how it will help the channel grow. Click the button right now. It really helps me to upload these kinds of videos every single week. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Now let's continue. The first extremely important lesson that I learned from Jiro is the following. When I was making my career change to DevOps, I did the exact same thing that everybody does, the same thing that you are doing and that all my students that come to me are doing. They watch courses, watch YouTube videos, but they never touch the keyboard. They are just collecting all of these multiple choice certifications, but they do not build. They do not bring what they learn into practice. And this was my biggest mistake. I was reading book after book. I was doing course after course, but I was never actually building something. I was reading the menu, but I never entered the kitchen. And when I watched the documentary and when I discovered Jiro's story, something really stood out. Like, he wasn't reading books about making sushi. He made sushi. So when I first realized this, I basically got rid of all of the books and everything, and I started building. And of course, you need some ground level knowledge to get going, but it really highlighted the importance of project-based learning. That is why when I teach my students, everything is centered around portfolio projects that you build from the ground up that you can present to people. Everything is centered around practical things that you actually build, because just focusing on the theory is only going to get you so far. You need to get hands-on and start building. And you have to do it thousands of times. You don't get good at Vim or working on the command line by watching one of my videos and thinking, oh yeah, I'll start using Vim and then moving on to the next thing. You have to do it day in, day out and putting in the reps. So instead of treating engineering as a subject to study, I started approaching it as a craft. Just like making sushi or woodworking, blacksmithing, the stuff that you have to do practically in the real world in order to get better. That's how I started approaching it. Less books and more hands on the keyboard. I never moved on to any new subject before I built something, before I verified that I could actually build it. That is the first most important thing that Jiro taught me. Doing, not watching. The second thing that Jiro taught me was focus. Now, Jiro focused on sushi, and he did the same thing for over 70 years. Now, in our Western world, that is almost unheard of. You hardly get people who do this exact same thing for 70 years, which is why it was so inspiring to me. And to be honest, like, if you know a bit of my story, I did have a tendency to go really deep into one thing, learn it, and then zoom back out and then move on to the next thing. It wasn't necessarily shiny object syndrome, because I would get a lot of benefits out of what I was doing, and I was doing it quite deliberately. But I do have a pretty colorful history and many different hobbies and things that I can do. I can play 7 different musical instruments. I can sing. I know how to cut axes with hand tools. I can build buildings with hand tools. I've done and studied all of that. But I never really committed to something like that. I haven't had that particular focus. So seeing Jiro and his commitment and dedication to his craft really brought me back and made me reflect on how I was living my life. I realized that every time I chased another new thing, I was moving away from the depth that I wanted to achieve. It was moving me away from the craftsman that I wanted to become. So seeing his example every time brought me back to my center, which was becoming a DevOps engineer. So the way I fixed this was, first of all, I made my hobby my work. As I said, I was doing a lot of this in my free time. So I committed to that completely and made it my job. I made my day job out of the stuff that I was doing in the evening. And this means that because I already liked what I was doing, I started to create this flywheel where I would be working 8 hours a day on stuff that I loved doing at work. And then in the evening, I would keep studying. And in my case, I was working with Linux during the daytime. And during that time, I discovered Kubernetes, and I studied and played with Kubernetes in my free time. And like a shokunin, I did my 8 hours of work, I had dinner, and then I continued studying. I've been working 12 plus hours a day ever since I changed my career, 7 days a week, because I love what I'm doing. And that's also why I became such a capable engineer in such a short time. Because when you keep doing what you do in your free time as well, then your evening studies start feeding into your day work. And then it becomes this flywheel that just keeps going faster and faster, and you grow and grow and grow. And in this case, the games here are different types of DevOps tools. I could be inside of this playground with a fence around it, but inside of the fence, I could do whatever I want. So to accommodate this sort of shiny object syndrome within my personality, I gave myself permission to go into all the rabbit holes I wanted within the playground. So I could focus on writing Python for a few months. And when I sort of got over that, I could then go deeper into CI/CD pipelines. And when I went really deep into GitHub Actions for a while, I could then zoom out again and think, okay, what's the next thing that I really want to get deeper on? Now I'm going really deep on running local AI and how to host AI inference on Kubernetes clusters, and how do you schedule this stuff on GPUs. So I have this playground I'm in where I'm allowed to go deep into many different things, but they're all contributing to this one single goal, which is to become a DevOps shokunin, to become a DevOps sushi master. So this really helps me when I get the urge to get back into music production again, or when I want to pick up an older hobby like calligraphy. I will ask myself, well, is this contributing to my greater goal? And sometimes the answer is yes. But in this case, very often the answer is no, and I would rather pick a fun, focused thing I want to do, like local AI. I would rather pick that and then go deep on that within the playground that I created for myself. Now, when I set out, it took me a very long time to actually decide what should be inside of the playground. It's really hard with all of these DevOps tools and all of these different things that you could and should learn as a aspiring DevOps engineer or someone who is already in DevOps or a sysadmin who wants to get further in their career. But how do you decide what needs to be inside of that playground? This is one of the key things, that DevOps is such a broad area. There's so much to learn that it can become very hard to prioritize which elements should be in the playground. So if you are an aspiring DevOps engineer, or you're someone who wants to become a DevOps engineer, maybe you are already a DevOps engineer and you want to go to the next level, I created a free resource for you, which is my DevOps Career Blueprint. It's a 10-day email course that you can get completely for free by clicking the link down below. And when you sign up, you're going to get access to 20 plus hours of premium course material. It's the same stuff that my paid students get. You're going to get the full DevOps career roadmap and everything that I can teach you to put in that playground. It's the full career roadmap. So check out the link below. It's completely for free. I've spent hundreds of hours creating this, and I hope it will serve you well. And the third thing that Jiro and other shokunins have taught me is to take care of your tools. If you watch the documentary and you see him cutting the sushi and taking care of the knives, you can see that they are holding these tools almost as if they are sacred, and they put a lot of care into maintaining them and also investing in the quality of them. So you treat them as the extension of yourself. And going back to the woodworking example I used earlier, right? I learned how to cut down trees by using an axe, a hand axe. I have also learned how to use chainsaws, but I specifically wanted to build a cabin with only hand tools. So I went deep and I learned how to do that. And I learned about how lumberjacks in the old days, they would spend extraordinary amount of time of keeping their axes sharp. You spend a lot of time filing and then honing the edge with a sharpening stone, because if you learn how to wield an axe and how to use it properly, when you have a tree like this, you're not just hammering it like an idiot and waiting until it falls down. Like if you make a cut like this, you can pull out like this big chunk of wood with 3 axe strokes. You can do top, bottom, and then whip it out like that. You can pull out like a big chunk of wood that way. But that only works if you know the right technique of chopping with the axe and to have an axe that is as sharp as possible. And when I saw Jiro using these tools so perfectly, then I realized that I had to put the same mindset into my engineering work. Because like, ask yourself, if you're watching this, it's very likely that you have been using a computer for 10 hours a day for almost your whole life. Most people who are watching this have done that. If you extend that to the rest of the world, like there are millions of knowledge workers who use a computer for 8+ hours a day. But you and those knowledge workers have almost certainly never thought about how can I use this tool, this computer, as efficiently as possible. You never stepped back and thought about how can I make this experience better, more efficient? How can I sharpen my axe? People working in an office using Windows, Microsoft Word, do not think about sharpening their axe. And this is mind-blowing to me. But this is what I realized when I became a DevOps engineer. I saw the seniors around me, and I had a mentor who unfortunately passed away recently. When I saw him using the tools of the craft in a way that I had never seen before, it was like, oh, that is how it's done. And the tools of the craft in this case are command line skills, using Vim as your editor and building a keyboard-centric workflow and being completely fluent on the command line. You see, there are plenty of people out there who call themselves DevOps engineers, but all they can do is click around in the AWS console and maybe ask ChatGPT to write some Terraform code. If you put these guys in a production incident on a Linux command line, they will not know what to do. And this is what I bring to my students. It's not a superficial sort of boot camp that you walk through and you are sort of a AWS console monkey. No, I teach my students to accept DevOps engineering, Kubernetes engineering as a craft. And in order to teach the craft, in order to practice the craft, you have to learn Linux on a deep level. You have to be able to navigate the command line without thinking. You have to assume that you are you never have internet. You need to be able to get information from the man pages because you have bash, you have the built-ins, you have the main pages right there, and that is all you need. A professional Shokunin DevOps engineer does not need the internet or ChatGPT to figure out what he needs to do on a Linux system, okay? A DevOps engineer on a Shokunin level is able to edit text and write code on any system in the world by using the editor that's included in almost every system, including containers. This is the standard that I hold my students to and which I teach in KubeCraft every single day. And that is why people come to me, because I have this different approach. I have the approach of a craftsman, both to my teaching and the standard that I want to instill in my students. KubeCraft is not a bootcamp that you go through and then get a job within 2 weeks. No, I teach the craft of a Kubernetes engineer, because this is the path that I followed, inspired by Shokunin, by going deep and learning the tools properly, going deep and learning how to sharpen your axe and how to use it efficiently. That is how you become a DevOps Shokunin. And it's not just about learning the tools deeply, it's also about maintaining them, keeping the axe sharp. And I'll tell you a story about how I have neglected to keep some of my axes sharp. You see, in the beginning of my journey, I learned Vim. Plain Vim, not NeoVim, no plugins, nothing, just Vim. I did everything in Vim for well over a year, and this was the best advice that my mentors gave me. Do everything in Vim for over a year. But after using Vim for over a year, I moved on to NeoVim and eventually to Lazy Vim specifically. And what you get inside of Lazy Vim is, for example, this Explorer sidebar where I can easily navigate my files like this, and then I can open one of these directories. I can easily navigate it like this. And it works. It's nice to do it. When I want to make a new file, I can do test.yaml and add it here. Okay? So this works really well. But by getting used to this, my Vim skills actually have atrophied. Pressing space E and this opens, it's fast. But in Vim, you do not have a sidebar like this, not if you install any plugin for it. Because I used to be able to just split my screen and open a new file in here. Well, I was doing a live stream the other day for my Linux community, and to prove the point, I kind of went into some areas that I hadn't practiced for a while before, and I could not for the life of me remember how to create a new file from within Vim. I was gotten so used to this sidebar and adding files this way that I forgot how to do it. Well, you do it by pressing E test.yaml, test2.yaml. That is actually how you do it. But in that moment, during the live stream, I could not remember it. And it made me realize that, oh, I've been using this fancy editor for a while now. And yes, it's better than using VS Code because at least I'm on the command line. But my Vim skills have definitely atrophied. So it's not just about learning the tools and learning how to use them. You also have to maintain them. You have to keep the axe sharp. And that is especially in the age of AI right now, where everything is just a chat prompt away. This is a massive danger for myself and others, where all of the skills that I've built up over the years are already atrophying massively. Like, for example, writing code. I hardly write any code myself anymore. I'm just asking Claude to do that. Well, if I keep doing that for 5 more years, I won't even be able to write Python anymore, which is concerning. So I have to keep the axe sharp and keep maintaining my skills. So in the beginning of my tech career, I was very fortunate to have Jiro as an example to look up to. He taught me to approach engineering as a craft rather than a subject of study. And by applying these principles and these lessons that I've learned from him, it made me the man that I am today. And I'm not saying this to brag, but I went from nurse with 0 formal tech experience to a senior DevOps engineer making well over 6 figures a year. And I'm able to travel the world in my camper van and work from the road. Now, this was something that I had dreamed of for my entire life. I was watching these videos on Instagram of software engineers doing this, and I was thinking, oh, one day maybe I could do something similar. But there I was stuck in the hospital having to work night shifts every week. It was so far from where I was at that point in time. But by applying the craftsman's mindset, I became what I call a sovereign craftsman. But here's the thing, I didn't become a sovereign craftsman because I set out to work remotely from a camper van. I became a sovereign craftsman because I focused on the craft. I focused deeply on the technology, found mentors. I invested hours and hours of time, of my personal time, into my studies, creating this flywheel and becoming better and better every single week. And I became a sovereign craftsman because of that. The sovereignty was gained as a side benefit from going deep on the craft itself. But now I am sovereign. I am in control. I have my own business. I work with clients that I want. I work with the technology that I want. And I have complete control over where and when I work. I can work from the road as a sovereign craftsman. And this is, I believe, the ultimate way of living your life. Do not have a boss to refer to be in control of your own time, and to have complete decision-making power over what your day looks like and what you do. That is what I call the sovereign craftsman. And this is what I teach now. I built KubeCraft because I want to teach the craft of the Kubernetes engineer. I want to help people who were in the same position I was, working as a nurse, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to put in the playground, what to focus on, and how to sharpen the axe. I take a completely different approach to teaching DevOps because I have found an approach which is different from following boot camps or anything like that. We take the approach of the Shokunin. We go deep, and I'll teach you how to do that. If that sounds interesting to you, you can check out the links below in the description. You can also start with the free DevOps Career Blueprint. It's completely for free. But if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video, is to stop approaching engineering as an object of study, but to approach it as a craft. Adopt the craftsman's mindset and you will go far. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.